Hi everyone, so big news from Australia on Friday. Back in 1975, John Kerr, the Governor General, sacked Gough Whitlam as Prime Minister in what was a pretty outrageous affront to the Constitution. And ever since then, John Kerr has insisted that he did not tell the Queen what he was planning to do until the last minute. However, Jenny Hocking, a professor at Monash University in Melbourne, a few years ago, she discovered that there were letters between John Kerr and the Queen dating back several months relating to his plans to dismiss the PM. Jenny Hocking sought to get access to these letters from the National Archives in Canberra, and yet the National Archives refused permission to see the letters on the grounds that they were personal and private correspondence, which is quite an extraordinary claim given that these were official letters between two offices of state. Now, it turned out that it was the Queen herself who insisted that these letters remain secret on the grounds that they were personal and private, and so Jenny then pursued the matter through the courts, and on Friday it finally came to a head when the highest court in Australia, the High Court, handed down its decision saying that these were official documents, that they were not personal correspondence, and therefore they needed to be released as per any other documents under the archives legislation in Australia. I spoke to Jenny Hocking recently on our Abolish the Monarchy podcast, and this is what she told me.
That's right. It's an extraordinary situation where the letters between a Governor-General and the Queen, which are the two positions at the apex of a constitutional monarchy, have been nevertheless deemed to be personal letters. That Kerr himself recognised the historical importance of the letters. He believed that they should be available for historians and scholars to look at as an important part of our history. It is the Palace and it is Government House in Australia that is maintaining this strict embargo over the letters.
This is a huge victory for Jenny, of course, and for democracy in Australia. It's a huge blow to the Queen and to the monarchy, and I think it's going to be a huge help to the Australian Republican movement. Now, of course, we haven't seen what the letters say as yet, but there were hundreds of them. John Kerr was writing to the Queen more than once a day on many occasions, and the Queen was replying. Now, the big question is, why didn't the Queen advise and warn her Prime Minister, Gough Whitlam, what the Governor-General was up to? Why didn't she advise the Governor-General to speak to the Prime Minister about his intentions? And why has it been kept secret for so long? As with anything with the royals, they insist on secrecy. They don't want to be scrutinised and held to account. But we're now in this extraordinary position where the Queen may be scrutinised for actions she took more than 4 decades ago. And this may have implications for the UK. We just simply don't know to what extent the Queen does interfere or get involved with or have knowledge of the affairs of state. Republic has been running its own campaign over the last few years to have official archives in the UK released and made public. Official documents held by the government in London are sent to the archives in Kew, unless they are to do with the royal family, in which case they are sent to the Royal Archives in Windsor Castle. Now, that is classified as a personal family archive, and yet official documentation of our head of state is sent there and is therefore beyond all access, beyond all reach, unless you happen to be a researcher who they feel they are happy to trust. Now, this is a shocking state of affairs. Of course, the head of state is a public figure. That office is part of our constitution. It's a public institution, and all of its documents and all of its records should be in queue along with everything else, and subject to the 20-year rule along with everything else. So in Australia, we wait to see what the National Archives will do. I don't think they've got any more room for manoeuvre. Jenny Hocking has certainly made it plain that she expects the letters to be released in the next few days, and has said that she'll be in Canberra this week to meet with the archives and to receive those letters. So keep an eye out for the news over the next few days. We don't know yet what the letters say, but they could be very revealing of the relationship between the monarch and Australia, and of course the attitude of the Queen towards these sorts of constitutional issues. And there are big questions certainly to answer about why the dismissal took place when the Queen, Australia's head of state, was aware of the plans being made by the Governor-General John Kerr. If you want to find out more about the dismissal, of course, catch our podcast at republic.org.uk/podcast. You can also search for Abolish the Monarchy podcast on Spotify and the Apple app. Also, there's this brilliant book by Jenny Hocking explaining what happened in 1975. So watch out for the news, and I'll catch you later.